On behalf of everyone at WNET, congratulations to Steve Adubato and the Caucus Educational Corporation on 25 great years of broadcasting.
Hi, I'm Tom Marino. At Cohn-Resnick, we believe that all citizens need to be informed about the issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support the programming produced by Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Barnabas Health, Berkeley College, the law firm of Gibbons PC, United Water, making the planet sustainable is the best job on Earth, Wells Fargo, Verizon Communications, and by New Jersey Natural Gas, proud to support education in our communities. Promotional support provided by the Star Ledger, powering NJ.com, and by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association and its monthly magazine, New Jersey Business.
This is One-on-One.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
People like laughing at others, so I don't mind if the other is me.
See, you go right into the character. That's what it is.
I'm bringing families together a half an hour each week. Man, I'm doing something special.
And so I do feel successful.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. Welcome to the Tisch WNET studios right here in the heart of New York in Lincoln Center. It's my honor, my pleasure to welcome Dr. Paul Bloom, the author of a compelling book. It is called Just Babies, The Origins of Good and Evil. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
The premise of this book is fascinating. And the research that you and your colleagues have done was featured on 60 Minutes.
It was.
And it basically argues that babies are born the way they are, and we can do everything that we want to do, nurturing them in a certain way, and it does matter to a large extent, but some of good and evil is determined otherwise, no?
Yes, I argue that there's a lot of evidence suggesting that we're born with a sense of right and wrong. We're born with some degree of compassion and empathy, with some sense of fairness and justice. There's some genetic differences, but there's also some things which all normal humans share. And there's a sort of a fundamental core of morality that we all possess.
And so what's interesting is that the research that you did, the methodology, which was actually played out, and we saw 60 Minutes, when I watched that, it was very small children, 3 months.
We tested kids as young as 3 months.
Watching puppet shows. And in those
Right.
puppet shows, these morality plays, if you will, played out, such as?
That's right. So you might have a show where there's a character trying to get up the hill. Another character gently pushes it up, and a third character shoves it down. Then you offer the characters to the baby, the good guy and the bad guy. And then what we find is, for even young babies, they'll tend to prefer the good guy. They'll reach for the good guy. They'll look longer at the good guy. And then when they get a little bit older, they'll reward the good guy and they'll punish the bad guy. They'll punish them by taking away stuff. And when they see other characters be cruel to the bad guy, they like the other characters more. So, these are ways we're trying to understand. We can't ask them, if I want to know your morality, I would ask you or watch you. Can't do that for a baby, but you could study their reactions to right and wrong, and you could learn a lot from that.
And so, it's so interesting to me. I was saying to you before we get on the air that our two younger sons are here, happen to be here in the studio, and one is 9 and one is 11, and they couldn't be more different. And you think you raise them, you treat them the same way, which may or may not be true, but you think you do. And they have very different personalities. Genetics?
So a lot of my research is interested in what we all share, but then there's how we're different. And I think it's to some extent what common sense will tell you, that it's a bit of both. So a lot of how we are raised is influenced by our environment, and particularly how parents respond to a kid and treat a kid will affect the kid's morality. A kid growing up now is going to be very different from a kid growing up 100 years ago. But then there also is genetics. A lot of the temperament that's relevant to morality, such as how aggressive you are,
right,
how empathetic you are, is to some extent the genetic toss of a dice.
The genetic toss of a dice?
Yeah.
Yeah, but doctor, can't you at some point, okay, this baby acts or responds in a certain way to these experiments, but then they're 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
Doesn't then the parent have the ability to do something or a series of things in shaping and molding that child in a way that can undo some of that?
Yes. I mean, So what we find in babies is a universal core, but it's very limited. The initial moral responses you see in a human are limited to people close to them, their siblings, their parents, their people around them. But you and I have a larger morality, which could include people we don't know, include strangers, include people in other countries. To the extent the morality goes from being narrow and tight to expand, has a lot to do with how you're raised. It has a lot to do with the amount of contact you have with other people, the stories you're told.
So the thing is, I mean, I can't imagine that I'm not a product of what I saw from my parents, what I did see, what I didn't see, how I saw things play out. Not just what my parents said about right and wrong, but what I actually saw them do. Now, it's so interesting because I would imagine there are some parents watching this who say, so it's the roll of the genetic dice. So what difference does it make what kind of parent I really am or how hard I work trying to teach a kid right from wrong if it's a roll of the dice? And that's not the message of the book.
It's not at all. So take an analogy. It's partially the genetic chance, your musculature, how big and strong you're going to get. But you'd have to be crazy to say, fine, when it comes to training an athlete, forget about training. It's all genetically determined. That's ridiculous. How much you exercise, how much you work out, what's on a training regime will determine how strong, how fast you are. It's the same thing with morality. To some extent, people have different calibration. They start off in different ways, but their experience could cause them either to, in some cases, become kind of monstrous, or in other cases, become terrific people.
The myths that you were trying to tackle, do away with in the book include?
Oh, a lot of them. One is that we're born blank slates. We're born empty heads.
You don't buy it?
I don't buy it at all. That there's so much evidence now from developmental psychology, from evolutionary theory, from studies of other creatures, that we are born with a fundamental moral sense, just in the same way we're actually born with an understanding of the physical world, an understanding of the social world. One of the, I think, most surprising findings of contemporary psychology is how much of knowledge is pre-wired into the brain. So that's one myth. Another myth is that morality is fundamentally a matter of emotions and gut feelings and disgust and anger. And to a large extent it is. But to a large extent, reason, rational deliberation, argument, discussion, what we're doing now, plays a powerful role in the morality that we have.
Give me a little more on that.
Well,
for instance?
Well, consider moral progress. So hundreds of years ago, people like us would naturally believe that slavery was right, slavery was moral. When I was born, about 90% of Americans thought interracial marriage was morally wrong. We've gotten better in certain ways. And then the question is, how did we get better? And one way we got better is we've made arguments, we've taken other people's perspectives and so on. It's not entirely dissimilar from science, where our science has also gotten better.
So same-sex marriage, you could look at it in a comparable fashion. If you looked at studies from early 1980s, 85, then to 90, then you look at today, the numbers are different. And people would often say that it was the morality or their sense of morality or what they perceived to be right and wrong that caused them to say that they thought same-sex marriage was wrong. And now the numbers are very different.
The analogy between attitudes towards same-sex marriage and attitudes towards interracial marriage, I think, is a strong one. You're getting the same trends, and for similar reasons. So attitudes about interracial interactions change a lot because of the media, the Cosby Show, and so on. Just like attitudes about gay marriage are changing due to shows like Will and Grace and Modern Family.
Familiarity, conversation.
Right. So people may not have a gay friend or a black friend, but if they watch TV, they have people who strike them very much as a gay friend or a black friend, and that could have a difference. That could make it a difference.
This is fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. Just Babies, they are not blank slates.
They are not.
The book is called Just Babies, The Origins of Good and Evil. Dr. Paul Bloom, I want to thank you and your colleagues for doing important research and sharing it with us here on public television.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you. We are here at the Tisch WNET studios. We'll be back with One-on-One right after this. Thank you, Doctor.
If you would like more information on this program, or if you'd like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Visit us online at oneonone.org. Or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, Ph.D.
Paula Payton is the Director of Strategic Communication, Marketing, and Media Management Programs, New York University School of Continuing and Professional Studies. Good to have you with us.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Good, good. Now explain what that means.
Well, that means that NYU has been fairly forward-thinking in terms of the changes in media We have recently reorganized to take two great programs, one in PR and corporate communication, of which we're very happy you're part of, marketing, and also graphic communication, and we've pulled them into one banner department, which is called, as you said, strategic communication, marketing, and media management. The reason we've done that is primarily to help our students leverage what we see as equities between those three fields. There's no reason today why a student that wants to have a degree in corporate communication and PR should know a little bit more about branding, should know a little bit more about visual identity. And likewise, a student who's into visual identity should know about crisis communication or branding as well.
And it's absolutely true. And in fact, Paula mentioned it. Full disclosure, I actually teach in the program, co-teach with Lou Capozzi, who's a fabulous professor there, and I've been there for the last few years. And I've learned an awful lot, not just about NYU, but more importantly about the student body there, which is great. And you've added this other component.
Yes.
But what's really interesting to me, and I know will be interesting to the people watching on public television, this program has a student body that is so incredibly diverse, and the globalization of the program is important to talk about it. Go ahead.
It's phenomenal. We now have, collectively, between those three programs, we have about 1,000 students. We've been growing about 30 to 40% each year. Our growth has come from markets like India, like China, but we also draw from the tri-state area. We draw pretty heavily from New Jersey and also New York. What makes our program special is because New York is the mecca of media. Students come from all four corners of the earth to learn from best-in-class professors. Our professors come from corporate communications.
The practitioners.
Yes, they are practitioners.
Why is that so important? As opposed to,
critical.
No disrespect to those who are doing the research, which is very important. Why is this program at NYU work so hard to bring in folks who actually do it?
So our students can benefit from not only knowing the strategy, but also tactics. So when they get that job, they can hit the ground running. Our practitioners by day, they're running businesses, either entrepreneurial startups or they're working at Fortune 50 companies. And so they take the practices that they've learned and they teach our students, so our students are immediately actionable on their new jobs. So.
But there's another part to that. One of the things I've always respected about the program is that you're very tied as an academic institution to corporations. Those partnerships are important. Talk about them.
Yes. We work very closely with a number of different companies from an internship standpoint, but also from a recruiting standpoint. Our company partners look to NYU to provide them with students who have sort of the latest thinking, the latest tactics. We work with just a range of companies from all around the world.
Interesting. People think about, the course we teach is about branding and crisis communication. Yes. People think, there's a course in that?
Yes.
PR, there's a course in that? There's a body of knowledge. There's a science to this. Talk about that.
Yes.
And not everyone, NYU was ahead of a lot of other places who were like, nah, we're not going to do that.
Right. Thankfully, PR is both art and science. And so it takes both strategy, tactics. It takes the idea of taking a message and crafting it and then delivering it in good times and in more challenging times, like in crisis. And we have, over the last few years, since 2005, we sort of worked on refining the discipline. My predecessor, John Dorley, a number of the other instructors in the program, like Lou Capozzi, worked very hard to sort of impart and refine the science and the art of PR for our students.
Your background. Talk about it as you come into this position.
So I cut my teeth as a cognitive psychologist, which means I'm very insights-driven. I spent my... Insights-driven,
Translate
yes.
that.
The future really belongs to the person who understands the consumer from the best standpoint. And many companies, as you know, are reorganizing around the customer, the consumer. My specialty is understanding how consumers behave and what motivates them to behave in different ways. And that's useful if you're a brand or if you're a corporation.
For instance?
So for instance, one of the areas that I've worked in is visual perception. We know in different sort of environments that consumers will pay attention more to this and to less of that. And that's very relevant when you're trying to put together sort of a branding message.
Well, hold on, so interesting. From a branding point of view, I'm very caught up. My academic and practical orientation is about, I'll often say, in the last book I wrote called You Are the Brand, said, if a CEO is the head of the company, he or she is the brand of that company. So if they're screwing up, I don't care how good your marketing campaign is, your brand's in trouble because he or she is the brand. You're also saying that part of the brand has to do with the visual representation of that company's products in the marketplace. Am I making it too?
No, you're
So
you're exactly
Coca-Cola,
right. Yeah.
the
The iconic bottle and the
something
brand.
to
Yes.
that, or am I
Yes.
making?
No,
There's
you're
something
right.
to that.
Yes, you're exactly right. One of the things that's often overlooked when we think about visual processing is brands exist in context, much like companies exist in marketplaces and in environments. So when we study how consumers interact with brands, it's best to understand the ecosystem in which they exist in. So if I'm going to make a bottle of Coke stand out from a shelf, I better well understand what else is on the shelf with me. And what else is sort of in the digital environment, because there's a lot of noise and clutter. And as a good ambassador of the brand, you really have to understand how to separate your brand signal from all the rest of the brand noise.
And it's so interesting. People who say, I don't have to be involved in that because in my industry that's not important. It's delusional, because even in public television, I mean, the WNET, we're here at the WNET, the Tisch WNET studio, we have to stand out. It's not just that your logo has to stand out,
That's
your
right.
programming has to stand out, the people on the air have to stand out. That brand is a product of a lot of factors. Know it?
Absolutely.
And people who think that's not me, they're wrong.
That's exactly right.
Including NYU. There's a whole brand there. Talk about that brand.
Yes, absolutely. We are in the process of taking some of our educational programs, and we're rolling them out overseas. And what continues to surprise and delight us is just how strong the NYU brand is in every market. We never have to explain what NYU is in any point of the world where we're talking about our programs. No, NYU is extremely understood and well known. It doesn't matter how far abroad you go or where you go. It's quite strong.
People know it.
People know it.
Paula Payton, Director of the Strategic Communication, Marketing, and Media Management Programs at NYU, School of Continuing Professional Studies. I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
Good stuff.
Thanks.
We'll be back from the Tisch WNET studios right after this. Good stuff.
If you would like more information on this program, or if you'd like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Visit us online at oneonone.org. Or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, Ph.D.
Todd Forrest is Arthur Ross Vice President for Horticulture and Living Collections at the New York Botanical Garden. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Todd Forrest, your real name?
It is my real name. People often ask me if I changed it, and I said no, but I'm thinking of it.
That is a great name.
It is.
And it works here well. You grew up in Short Hills, New Jersey.
I did.
All right. There is a mall there.
There is a mall there.
All right, but what's fascinating to me is that in doing the research for the show, there weren't any role models for you to go into horticulture. There were other folks into corporate America, let's say.
Yeah.
So where does this interest come from? Horticulture.
I really think that it began just like it does for many young kids, digging around in the backyard, which to me seemed like an endless universe of excitement. And that connection with nature, however small and however kind of unwild, or however tended, just really turned something on inside of me. But I had no idea how one would pursue a life that involved nature in any way.
How did you?
I just followed my passion. I often say I followed the path of least resistance. I never thought that I should do something. I always tried to find the thing that I was passionate about doing. And
so you didn't say, where am I going to make money?
No.
Where's the best career?
No.
You said, what do I love?
Clearly.
What do you mean clearly?
Clearly. Well, it was definitely, making money was never the goal. Lucky to have parents who were very supportive. My father said, I don't care what you do as long as you are excellent at whatever it is you choose to do, which is a great message for a child.
You went to Yale?
I did for graduate school.
Wow, you couldn't get into a really good school?
Yeah, exactly. It's the only school that would have me.
I went to Rutgers. It's, the other Ivy League
It's a much
school.
older school, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
right.
the Queens College.
Exactly, that's what we used to call Queens College.
Yeah.
So how do you get the New York Botanical Garden, right? For those who don't know, they've heard of it, but they don't really know what it is. What is it?
It is a little oasis, a little slice of paradise in New York City. 250 acres, a National Historic Landmark landscape. It was chosen, the site for the garden was chosen in the 19th century.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's this great combination of wild nature. There's a 50-acre old-growth forest. It's never been cut, never been cleared. And the garden was built around that. And so around that incredible forest, which even in the 19th century was celebrated, are the Rose Garden, the Rock Garden, the Conservatory. These examples of art and nature combined together. So if you've never been, whether you're from New York City, by the way? That's a flowering cherry, the daybreak flowering cherry, and flowered by the Leon Levy Visitor Center. Incredible trees from around the world, plants from around the world. It's a place that's beautiful 12 months a year. I've been there for 15 years. 15? 15. And I love going there every day. Every day I see something different. Every day I learn something.
It's up in the Bronx.
It is.
Now, for folks who think they know what the Bronx is, and you guys are there,
Mm-hmm.
right? How accessible is it for the folks in the Bronx who particularly live in communities, neighborhoods in the Bronx that are, let's just say, challenged because there's not a lot going on there, or what's going on there isn't all that good? How do they get there?
Well, the garden is incredibly easy to get to for our neighbors or for anyone who's in New York City. And we are free, the grounds are free to the public all day Wednesday and on Saturday mornings. So no matter who you are or where you're from, if you just want to enjoy the garden,
How does it cost? What does it cost to go?
For an adult ticket during an exhibition, it's $20, and that gets you everything. The Conservatory exhibition, we have the holiday train show now. It gets you a tram ride around the garden, into the children's garden, into the rock garden, all these wonderful features. But on a Wednesday or Saturday, you can show up and just walk around our beautiful 250-acre site for free.
Just walk, what do you mean for free?
For free. It's free all day Wednesday for anyone who shows up, just the grounds, but it's 250 acres. I spent 15 years there and I still haven't explored the entire landscape.
When you decided that you wanted to do this, right, you wanted to go into this field, when you said, I don't know whether you were in Short Hills, New Jersey or where you were at the time, you said, I want to do this, I want to pursue this. What kind of reaction did you get from most of those closest to you?
The people who knew me well weren't at all surprised. You know, when I was a teenager growing up in Short Hills, New Jersey, I would ride my bike to the Great Swamp, which is this wonderful kind of magical place out in Morris County, New Jersey. And it was quite a long bike ride for a teenager from Short Hills to the Great Swamp. So anyone who knew me wasn't surprised. People today who I meet and tell them what I do, they ask me for advice on how to take care of their plants.
What do you mean?
They say, you know, I have this tree in my backyard and it has this thing going on with it, and do you have any idea? Or, oh, I have this plant, it's this house plant, and it's green, it's got flowers. You know what it is? So people love to engage with plants and gardens. People, it's a wonderfully democratic thing.
Democratic.
Everybody can enjoy the beauty of nature. And everybody who tries can derive satisfaction from growing a plant successfully, whether it's a house plant on their windowsill in an apartment in the Bronx, whether it's a vegetable garden, whether it's a beautiful tree, whether it's roses. Everybody can derive, and I think it's because there's this fundamental connection to nature, to this sort of great, mysterious, powerful force that you gain by sort of stepping into that flow and really understanding this other living thing.
Someone says, well, you know, you look right behind us here in the heart of Manhattan, right?
And I see trees.
You see trees, right?
Yeah.
There are some trees out here, but someone says, oh, we're in a concrete jungle.
Yeah.
Right? Someone says, well, I live in the city. You know, I grew up in a place where there weren't a lot of trees, let's just say. It was Newark, New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
You know, I would say that Short Hills was 15 miles away, but it might have as well been 500 miles away because, you know, you were pretty far away.
Very far away.
Right? And I don't know how many people from Short Hills used to come to our neighborhood.
Used to go to Branchbrook Park all the time.
Branchbrook Park?
Trees.
Now, who was the designer? The designer. Who was the person who built Branchbrook Park, designed it and made it happen?
That's an excellent question. I would assume Olmsted.
Olmsted. And what else did Olmsted put together?
Of course, Central Park,
See?
Prospect Park.
You are good.
Yeah.
I only knew that because I grew up in the neighborhood. But that's good. You knew that.
He's really the only celebrity landscape architect, you know, that ever lived.
That's pretty cool.
A brilliant man. And actually, what was great about Olmsted is that he believed in the social value of parks in a city like New York.
Right.
He believed that everybody benefited from a more direct connection to nature. It shouldn't just be the people who could afford to go.
It's so interesting you say that because people know Central Park because we're here in Manhattan. But if you grew up where I did in Newark, and you know Branchbrook Park,
yeah.
It has the most extraordinary cherry blossom display anywhere in the country. I would say it would go head to head against Washington, D.C. But my point is, for those of us who didn't grow up with a lot financially, Branchbrook Park was everything for us.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking, going back to my question, concrete jungle. For those who say, listen, I'm in New York because I want to be in the city. I want to be by the subway. I want to be by the concrete. And you say, up there, what?
We have true wilderness. I ran into a person. One of the great pleasures of my job is that I run into visitors who have come to the garden, many from New York, but many from around the world. And one day, I have a golf cart, because it's a big place and I have to get around. And there was a woman walking back towards the train station, towards the Metro North train station, which is 22 minutes from Grand Central. So easy to get there. And so as I offer her a ride, and I ask her where she's from, and she's from, I think, Brooklyn, where now everyone seems to be from. I said, oh, why did you come out to the New York Botanical Garden? Are you a gardener? Are you an artist? Or do you love plants? She said, it's the best air in New York City.
The best air?
The best air. It's the cleanest air in New York City. And I had never thought of that. But of course, here are all these grand old trees just churning out oxygen. And there's one value to a green space in the city. But of course, the other value is, we are a cultural institution, like the Metropolitan Museum of Art, like the American Museum of Natural History. We were founded to help New York become a more civilized place, a more refined place. And you can come to the garden and learn literally anything about plants.
Well, I'll tell you what, we appreciate you coming in, Todd, and your name is perfect for you, and I don't want you, none of us want you to change it, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff. That was fun.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating 25 years of broadcast excellence in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System. Funding has been provided by Barnabas Health, Berkeley College, the law firm of Gibbons PC, United Water, Wells Fargo, Verizon Communications, and by New Jersey Natural Gas. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been made possible in part by the Adler Aphasia Center.
Hi, I'm Governor Tom Kean. A dear friend of mine had aphasia, which is a language disorder that occurs from a brain injury or a stroke. It robs a person's ability to communicate, but it doesn't affect their intellect. Programs and services offered at the Adler Aphasia Center help to improve my friend's communication skills, as well as her self-confidence and quality of life. Most importantly, she was among people who understood her. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with aphasia, there is hope.